Catherine McBroom just got married, and the internet is losing its mind. But here's the thing that nobody's talking about. Was she even legally married to Austin McBroom in the first place? Because if you look at everything Catherine posted about this wedding to Eigore, if you listen to the way she talked about walking down the aisle for the first time, and if you remember all the shady details about that supposed Ace family marriage, something doesn't add up. The Ace family built their entire brand on this perfect family image, but Catherine Paiz's recent wedding is making people question everything. Was the Austin McBroom marriage even real? Did Catherine and Austin actually tie the knot? Or was it all just another publicity stunt to cover up the Ace family drama? And why is Austin McBroom suddenly trying to rewrite history now that his ex-wife is actually happy? We're about to expose everything about the Catherine McBroom divorce that never was, the Ace family secrets they tried to hide, and why this wedding proves Catherine was never truly married before. Before we dive into this absolute mess, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're gonna want to be here for all the tea we're about to spill, and I promise our videos are way more entertaining than Austin's excuses. Now, let's get into it.
Catherine posted videos of herself trying on her wedding dress, and she was crying, like genuinely emotional, tears streaming down her face, the whole thing. She kept saying how she never thought this would happen to her, how she couldn't believe she was walking down the aisle to someone so perfect. And that's when the internet collectively stopped and said, "Hold up, never thought this would happen. Girl, weren't you already married?" Because if you followed Catherine Paiz or the Ace family for any amount of time, you'd remember they claimed for years that they were married. They talked about it constantly, posted about it, told their millions of fans that they'd gotten married in private. But here's where it gets interesting. Nobody ever saw a marriage certificate. No legal documents ever surfaced. And when they allegedly separated, there were no divorce papers filed. Nothing. It was like this marriage existed in their words only. And now Catherine's out here acting like this wedding to Eigore is her first time experiencing this moment.
The emotion in her voice when she was trying on that dress, it wasn't just happiness. It felt like relief, like she was finally getting something she'd been denied for years. She said she never imagined walking down the aisle to such an incredible person, and fans immediately started dissecting what that meant. Because if she was so happily married to Austin McBroom, if the Ace family was this perfect unit they portrayed, why does this feel like her first real wedding? The way she documented every moment, the way she couldn't stop talking about how blessed she felt, it all pointed to one thing. Whatever happened with Austin, it wasn't this. It wasn't real in the way this is real. And that revelation has people going back through years of Ace family content, trying to figure out what was genuine and what was just for the cameras. Let's talk about that infamous video where Austin and Catherine claimed they were married. The timing of that video alone should tell you everything you need to know. Austin had just been hit with massive cheating allegations. We're not talking about small rumors, we're talking about detailed accusations involving him and his father doing some really questionable things together. The internet was dragging the Ace family through the mud, sponsors were probably getting nervous, and their perfect family brand was crumbling. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, they drop a video titled, "We Got Married, The Truth," and announce they'd been married for 2 whole years. 2 years, and they just forgot to mention it? 2 years, and there was never a celebration, never a mention, never anything until it became convenient for their narrative? The whole thing screamed damage control.
In that video, they sat there, trying to explain why they never told anyone. Catherine said they wanted to keep it private, that they did it in their backyard with just the 2 of them present. No family, no friends, no celebration. Austin was wearing flip-flops and a t-shirt. Catherine didn't have a dress. There was no music, no flowers, nothing that you'd associate with an actual wedding. They claimed it was this beautiful, intimate moment that was just for them. But then why announce it at all? Why bring it up 2 years later, right when Austin's getting exposed for cheating? The logic didn't make sense then, and it makes even less sense now looking back on it. They said they wanted their real ceremony to be the big deal, the one they'd share with fans and family, but that ceremony never happened. Years went by, and they kept promising this big wedding, talking about live streaming it, maybe letting fans attend, but it never materialized.
Here's what really happened. They needed people to believe they were solid. They needed the cheating allegations to go away. And what better way to do that than to announce, you've been married this whole time? Never mind that marriage is a legal contract with paperwork and documentation. Never mind that their families were apparently upset about not being invited or even told. They expected everyone to just accept their word for it and move on. Catherine even admitted in that video that some family members were hurt, that she'd called her dad and casually mentioned they were getting married that week like it was no big deal. What kind of parents are okay with their daughter getting married without them there? And if it was so special and meaningful, why did it feel like they were trying to downplay it while simultaneously using it to prove their relationship was legitimate? The pattern with Austin and Catherine was always the same. Cheating rumors would surface, people would start questioning their relationship, and suddenly they'd post some grand gesture or announcement to distract everyone. The marriage announcement was just another item in a long line of manipulation tactics. Catherine even wrote in her book later that she was sad about never having her dream wedding, about not having her family there, about not wearing a beautiful dress or saying vows in front of the people she loved. She admitted that what happened in that backyard wasn't what she wanted, wasn't what she dreamed of as a little girl. So why do it? Why go through with something that made you sad just to keep up appearances? Because that's what the Ace family was built on. Appearances over reality, content over authenticity, views over genuine happiness. And speaking of things that didn't add up, let's talk about Austin's behavior after the separation. When they announced they were splitting up, which should have triggered divorce proceedings if they were legally married, nothing happened. No court filings, no legal paperwork, no division of assets that would be required in a divorce. They just went their separate ways like they'd been dating and broke up. Austin started seeing other people, Catherine moved on, and that was that. If they had been legally married, especially in California where they lived, there would have been a whole legal process to dissolve that marriage. Community property laws, custody agreements, beyond just co-parenting arrangements, all of it would have been public record. But there's nothing, which either means they lied about being married in the first place, or they got married somewhere without proper documentation, which would make it legally questionable at best. Now fast forward to Catherine's actual wedding with Eigore. The difference is night and day. She's posting about finding her wedding dress and crying tears of joy. She's talking about never imagining this moment would come. She's sharing every detail with her followers because she's genuinely excited and wants to celebrate. Eigore is posting these heartfelt messages about being the luckiest man alive, about watching her walk into the church being the most incredible moment of his life. The church, not a backyard, not a casual Tuesday afternoon in flip-flops. An actual ceremony with family, friends, celebration, all the things Catherine admitted she'd always wanted but never got with Austin. This was real. This was legal. This was the wedding that actually counted, and you could feel it in every post, every video, every word she shared.
Catherine wrote on Snapchat that she felt complete, that the wedding was better than she ever imagined. There's something about that word, complete, like she'd been missing a piece of herself all those years, like something was incomplete about her life before this moment. Eigore echoed that sentiment, talking about surrender and trust and following his heart. These weren't just empty words thrown out for social media engagement. These were two people who genuinely found each other and wanted to commit in a real, legal, meaningful way. The contrast to how Austin and Catherine talked about their supposed marriage couldn't be more stark. Where Austin and Catherine were defensive and explanatory, Catherine and Eigore were simply happy. Where the Ace family marriage felt like a business transaction announced at a convenient time, this wedding felt like an actual celebration of love.
But of course, Austin had to insert himself into the narrative somehow. Initially, he was invited to the wedding. Catherine wanted her kid's father there, wanted to show that they could be mature co-parents who supported each other's happiness. But then Austin started running his mouth online. He made comments about how Catherine and Eigore had to get married quickly because Eigore wasn't from the U.S., trying to delegitimize their relationship and make it seem like another arrangement rather than genuine love. He couldn't just be happy for her. He had to try and tear it down, make it seem less real, probably because it highlighted just how fake everything was between him and Catherine. So Catherine did what she should have done years ago. She uninvited him. She set a boundary and said, "No, you don't get to be part of this day if you're going to disrespect it."
Austin then went on his stream trying to rewrite the whole situation. Suddenly, it wasn't that he'd been uninvited. Oh no, he made the mature decision not to attend because he didn't want to take away from their special day. He wanted to support from a distance. He was being the bigger person. Except everyone saw through it immediately because they had already heard about him being uninvited. He tried to play it off like it had been over 2 years since their separation, and he'd moved on and only wanted what was best for Catherine. But his actions told a completely different story. This is the same guy who spent years cheating on her, lying to fans, using their family for content, and now he wanted to act like the supportive ex? The internet wasn't buying it. Even Austin's brother Landon got involved, addressing that since Austin wasn't going to be at the wedding, neither would he and his girlfriend. Instead, they scheduled a birthday dinner for the same night as Catherine's wedding. The pettiness was transparent. They couldn't just let Catherine have her moment without making it about them somehow. It's like the McBroom family doesn't know how to exist without creating drama or trying to stay relevant through other people's happiness. And honestly, Catherine and Eigore's wedding was probably better without them there. No awkward tension, no worried glances, no wondering if Austin was going to cause the scene or say something inappropriate. Just pure celebration of two people actually committed to each other. If you're still watching, you're clearly as invested in this drama as I am, so go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got so much more Ace family tea to spill, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's keep going.
The internet's reaction to all of this has been overwhelmingly supportive of Catherine. People are genuinely happy to see her happy, to see her get the wedding she always dreamed about, to see her with someone who actually treats her right and doesn't cheat with random girls while building a family brand. Comments on her wedding posts were full of congratulations and relief. Relief that she got out of that toxic situation with Austin. Relief that she found someone who values her. Relief that she's finally living authentically instead of performing for cameras and sponsors. Some people did point out that they were seeing more clips of Catherine at the wedding than Eigore, but others defended that by saying Eigore isn't an internet personality like Catherine is, so obviously she's going to share more of herself on social media. That's literally her job and her life. What this wedding did more than anything was expose just how fake the Ace family era really was. Looking back at old videos, knowing what we know now, you can see the cracks. You can see Catherine's forced smiles when Austin would make jokes about other women. You can see her disappointment when he'd prioritize content over their relationship. You can see the moments where she'd try to bring up serious topics and he'd deflect with humor or redirect to something more palatable for their young audience. The entire brand was built on a foundation of lies, and Catherine's genuine joy at this wedding with Eigore shattered whatever remained of that illusion. She lived in a fake pretend bubble for years, performing happiness while dealing with infidelity and disrespect, and now she's free. Think about how exhausting that must have been. Every video they filmed, Catherine had to pretend everything was perfect. Every time Austin cheated, which he eventually admitted to doing multiple times, she had to decide whether to address it or ignore it for the sake of their brand. Every time fans would comment about relationship goals or couple goals, she had to smile and thank them, while knowing the reality was nothing like what they portrayed. The pressure of maintaining that image while her actual relationship was falling apart must have been suffocating. And the worst part is that Austin had all the power, because the Ace family was his brand, his channel, his empire. Catherine was part of it, but she wasn't the face in the same way. So speaking up meant potentially losing everything she'd built, losing financial security for her kids, losing the platform she'd grown.
But she did it anyway. She eventually left, spoke her truth, wrote her book detailing the pain she went through, and started rebuilding her life on her own terms. That takes incredible strength, especially when you know you're going to face backlash from Austin's fans, especially when you know people are going to dissect every word you say and every move you make. Catherine chose her own happiness and her own mental health over maintaining a lie, and that's something that should be celebrated. Her wedding to Eigore wasn't just a ceremony, it was a statement that she deserves real love, real commitment, and real celebration. A statement that she's done performing for other people and she's going to live authentically from now on.
Now, let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about directly. Was Catherine and Austin's marriage even legal? Because if you look at all the evidence, or rather the lack of evidence, there are serious questions about whether they were ever legally married at all. In California, you need a marriage license, you need an officiant, you need witnesses, and the marriage needs to be registered with the county. There's a paper trail. Even if you have a private ceremony, even if it's just you and your partner, there's legal documentation that has to happen. And not a single document has ever surfaced proving Austin and Catherine were married. Not when they announced it, not during their separation, not ever. Which means either they lied about being married, or they went through some kind of ceremony that wasn't legally binding. Some people have speculated they did one of those online ordained minister things where a friend officiates, and maybe they didn't file the proper paperwork afterward. That would explain why they could claim to be married while having no legal documentation. But it also means they weren't actually married in the eyes of the law, which makes their whole narrative even more deceptive. They presented it to their fans as a real marriage. They used that status to defend against cheating allegations and prove their relationship was solid. But if it wasn't legal, then it was just another performance. Just another piece of content to manipulate their audience and maintain their brand. And that's deeply messed up when you think about how many young fans looked up to them and believed everything they said. Catherine's book gave us even more insight into how unhappy she was during the Ace family years. She talked about wanting a real wedding, about being sad that she never got to have that experience with family and friends around. She talked about the pain of Austin's infidelity, about feeling trapped in a situation where leaving meant destroying everything. She opened up about the emotional manipulation and the gaslighting, about being made to feel like she was overreacting to things that were genuinely hurtful. Reading that book and then watching her wedding videos, you can see the difference in her eyes. She's lighter. She's genuinely smiling. She's not performing happiness, she's actually experiencing it. That's what real love looks like, and it's something she never had with Austin, no matter what they claimed in their videos.
The fact that Austin tried to delegitimize Catherine and Eigore's marriage by saying they had to rush it for visa purposes tells you everything you need to know about his character. He couldn't let her have this win. He couldn't let her be happy without trying to tarnish it somehow. Even though he'd moved on, even though he was seeing other people, even though he'd admitted to cheating throughout their relationship, he still had to make her happiness about him and his narrative. That's not the behavior of someone who's truly moved on. That's the behavior of someone who's bitter that their ex found something real after leaving them. Austin built his entire brand on the Ace family image, and Catherine thriving without him destroys that image completely. It proves that he was the problem, not the relationship. Landon McBroom scheduling his birthday dinner on the same night as Catherine's wedding was equally petty, but in a way that's almost comical. Like, okay, you're going to have a birthday dinner to compete with a wedding? That's the best you could come up with? It's such obvious attention-seeking behavior that it's hard to take seriously. The McBroom brothers have always had this pattern of making everything about them, of needing to be the center of attention, and when they're not, they'll create drama to pull focus back their way. Catherine's wedding had nothing to do with them, wasn't about them, didn't concern them beyond Austin being a co-parent to the kids, but they still found a way to insert themselves into the narrative and try to create competing storylines. It's exhausting just watching it from the outside. Imagine having to deal with it as Catherine did for years.
What's interesting is how many former Ace family fans have completely turned on Austin and are now supporting Catherine fully.
You can see it in the comment sections, in the reaction videos, in the social media discussions. People who once defended Austin and gave him the benefit of the doubt are now looking back at everything with clear eyes and realizing how toxic he was. They're apologizing to Catherine for not believing her sooner, for defending Austin when the evidence was right there. It's a massive shift in public perception, and it's largely because Catherine's happiness now is such a stark contrast to her suppressed misery then. You can't fake the kind of joy she displayed at her wedding. You can't manufacture that level of genuine emotion, and seeing it made people realize just how much she was faking before. The whole situation also raises questions about influencer culture and parasocial relationships. Millions of people watched the Ace family videos, believed they knew Austin and Catherine, trusted that what they were seeing was real. They defended the relationship against critics, they bought the merchandise, they attended Ace Fest, they invested emotionally in this family. And it was largely a lie. Not just a marriage potentially not being legal, but the whole dynamic was manufactured for content. That betrayal of trust is significant. It makes fans question other influencers they follow, other relationships they believe in, other narratives they've bought into. If the Ace family could fool millions of people for years, who else is doing the same thing? It's made people more skeptical and more critical of what they see online, which honestly is probably a good thing.
Catherine's wedding also highlights the difference between content creation and actual life events. The Ace family turned everything into content. Their proposals, their pregnancy announcements, their kids' births, their daily lives, all of it was filmed and packaged for consumption. There was no separation between their private lives and their public personas. But Catherine's wedding to Eigore, while she shared parts of it, still maintained boundaries. She showed what she wanted to show, she kept intimate moments private, she controlled the narrative in a way she never could with Austin. That's growth. That's understanding that not everything needs to be content, that some moments are just for you and the people you love. Austin never understood that. For him, if it wasn't on camera, it didn't count. If it couldn't get views, it wasn't worth doing. The emotional manipulation that Catherine endured during her time with Austin is something that resonates with a lot of people who've been in similar situations. The pattern of cheating followed by love bombing, the public displays of affection to cover private disrespect, the using of their children as props to maintain an image, all of it is textbook toxic relationship behavior. And Catherine stayed for years, trying to make it work, trying to be enough, trying to fix something that was broken from the start. She finally reached a breaking point and left, but the damage was done. The years she spent in that relationship shaped her, changed her, left scars that she's still healing from. Her wedding to Eigore was part of that healing process. It was reclaiming something that had been tainted, rewriting a story that had been dictated by someone else's selfishness.
Austin's stream, where he tried to act like the supportive ex, was particularly grating because he'd spent so much time before that trying to paint Catherine in a negative light. He'd made comments about her parenting, about her choices, about her new relationship. He'd tried to maintain control over the narrative even after they separated. But once the wedding happened and he saw how happy people were for Catherine, he suddenly switched tactics. Suddenly, he was supportive and mature and only wanted what was best for her. It's the same manipulation he used throughout their relationship, just repackaged for a new situation. Change the approach, but keep the same goal, which is maintaining his image and staying relevant. The problem is that people see through it now. They're not buying his redemption arc because they've seen this show before, and they know how it ends. The question of whether Austin and Catherine were ever legally married matters beyond just gossip. It matters because they sold products based on their relationship. They promoted brands as a married couple. They gave relationship advice to their young audience as a married couple. If that marriage wasn't real, then they were operating under false pretenses. They were taking money from sponsors and fans while lying about a fundamental aspect of their lives. That's not just messy drama. That's potentially fraudulent depending on how they represented themselves in business dealings. And it's definitely unethical when it comes to the trust their audience placed in them. Young fans looked up to them, believed they were relationship goals, tried to model their own relationships after what they saw in Ace family videos. Finding out it was all fake, that the marriage might not have been legal, that Austin was cheating the whole time, that's damaging to those fans who invested so much emotionally.
Catherine walking down the aisle to Eigore was her reclaiming her narrative. It was her saying, "This is what I wanted all along. This is what I deserved. This is what real love looks like." Every tear she cried trying on that wedding dress was washing away years of settling for less, years of pretending to be happy, years of making excuses for someone who didn't respect her. Eigore's words about her being the most incredible woman in the universe, about cherishing the memory of her walking into the church forever, that's what someone who actually loves you sounds like. That's what commitment looks like. Not a backyard ceremony and flip-flops announced 2 years later to cover up cheating allegations. Not broken promises about future weddings that never happen. Real, genuine, showing up and choosing each other every day kind of love. The internet being overwhelmingly happy for Catherine says something too. Usually when influencers get married or have major life events, there's always negativity mixed in. There are always people trying to tear them down or find problems. But with Catherine's wedding, the response was almost universally positive. Even people who'd been critical of her in the past were celebrating this moment with her. That's because everyone could see how much she deserved this, how much she'd been through, how long she'd waited for something real. The collective relief that she'd escaped the Austin situation and found genuine happiness was palpable. People were invested in her happiness in a way that felt different from typical parasocial relationships. It felt like watching someone you actually care about finally get their happy ending after years of struggle.
Some people did question whether Catherine should have shared as much as she did about the wedding, whether she was oversharing or making too big a deal of it. But honestly, after years of having to pretend and perform and hide her real feelings, let her have this moment. Let her share her joy. Let her post every detail if she wants to, because she's earned the right to celebrate authentically. She spent years making content about a fake relationship. She can spend as much time as she wants documenting a real one. And if people are annoyed by her happiness, that says more about them than it does about her. There's something beautiful about someone being so genuinely happy that they can't help but share it with the world. That's not attention-seeking, that's just joy overflowing. Looking at everything together, from the suspicious timing of the Ace family marriage announcement to the lack of legal documentation, to Catherine's obvious happiness now, it paints a clear picture. Whatever happened between her and Austin, whether they were legally married or not, it wasn't real in any meaningful sense. It was a relationship that existed more for cameras and content than for genuine connection. It was built on lies and maintained through manipulation. And Catherine deserved so much better than that. She deserves someone who wants to marry her in a church surrounded by family and friends. She deserves someone who posts about her being the most incredible woman in the universe and actually means it. She deserves someone who doesn't cheat and lie and gaslight and use their relationship as content fodder. She deserves exactly what she has now with Eigore.
Before we wrap this up, make sure you're subscribed because we're going to keep following this story. And trust me, Austin is going to do something messy eventually. He always does. So subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's watch this drama unfold together. You know you want to. The legacy of the Ace family is going to be complicated. On one hand, they were incredibly successful. They built a massive following, made millions of dollars, created content that entertained people. But on the other hand, it was all built on deception. The marriage that might not have been legal, the cheating that was hidden, then admitted, the using of their children for views, the manipulation of their audience's trust, that's what people will remember. Not the fun videos or the pranks or the challenges, but the lies. And Catherine's wedding to Eigore is the final nail in that coffin. It's the proof that everything we suspected was true. It's the vindication for everyone who said something was off about Austin and Catherine's relationship from the beginning.
Catherine's journey from Ace family to her new life is honestly inspiring in a weird way. She was trapped in a toxic situation, dependent on it financially and emotionally, with her children's well-being tied to maintaining the status quo. But she still found the strength to leave. She still chose herself and her happiness over security and familiarity. She still rebuilt her life piece by piece, dealt with the public scrutiny, wrote her truth in a book, and came out the other side stronger. Now she's married to someone who actually loves and respects her, she's co-parenting with Austin as well as possible given his behavior, and she's living authentically. That takes courage that most people don't have. It takes faith in yourself, in your worth, to walk away from everything and start over. And she did it. And she's thriving. And that's the real story here. Austin trying to insert himself into Catherine's wedding narrative one last time was his final attempt to maintain relevance in her story. But she's moved on. She's written him out of the narrative, except as her children's father. Her life now doesn't revolve around his actions or reactions. She's not performing for his approval or trying to prove anything to him. She's just living, genuinely and fully, with someone who adds to her happiness instead of taking from it. That's the ultimate revenge, if you want to call it that, though it's not really revenge. It's just growth. It's just healing. It's just choosing better for yourself and never looking back. Austin can say whatever he wants on his streams, can make whatever excuses he needs to tell himself, but the truth is evident in Catherine's smile at her wedding. She won. Not in a competitive sense, but in the sense that she got out and found real happiness. And that's all that matters.
The whole situation is a reminder to not believe everything you see online. Influencers are creating content, building brands, maintaining images. What you see in a 10-minute video is a curated version of reality, not reality itself. The Ace family looked perfect from the outside, but was rotting from the inside. Catherine looked happy in those videos, but was miserable in real life. The marriage they claimed to have might not have been legal at all. Everything was smoke and mirrors, and it took Catherine leaving and finding real happiness for people to fully understand how fake it all was. So watch your favorite influencers, enjoy their content, but maintain that healthy skepticism. Remember that they're showing you what they want you to see, and there's always more to the story than what makes it into the final edit. Catherine McBroom got married last weekend, and it was beautiful, not just because the wedding itself was lovely, though it clearly was, but because it represented freedom, healing, growth, and choosing better. It represented the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It represented a woman who refused to settle for less than she deserved, finally getting everything she dreamed of. And whether Austin and Catherine were ever legally married or not, whether the Ace family marriage was real or just for show, whether any of it was genuine, none of that matters now. What matters is that Catherine is happy, genuinely happy, for what might be the first time in years. And that's worth celebrating. So congratulations to Catherine and Eigore. May they have everything the Ace family pretended to have. Real love, real commitment, and a real marriage that doesn't need to be defended or explained because its legitimacy speaks for itself. That's everything on Catherine's wedding and the Ace family marriage conspiracy. What do you think? Was Austin and Catherine's marriage even real? Do you think they were ever legally married, or was it all just content? Let me know in the comments below because I want to hear your theories. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to keep covering this story and all the other influencer drama you can't look away from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.